Horror games have become a key part of the gaming world, spanning many subgenres and styles. But what makes a horror game a successful one? The terrifying enemies? A sense of suspense due to limited resources? A horrifying plot filled with unexpected twists? All these little aspects can add up to make an amazingly terrifying game. But sometimes, what makes the game even scarier is that it's inspired by real-life events and places. Sometimes the plot isn't just the creation of some director's imagination, but a reflection of real events. Welcome to HotFix Gaming. I'm Joy. Today, we're bringing you 8 horror games that were inspired by real life. Buckle up and prepare to be terrified. 8. The Town of Light. This particular title is well known to be based on the Volterra Psychiatric Hospital in Volterra, Italy. In the game, you play as Renee, a 16-year-old girl who's staying in the hospital. You're free to wander the halls of the asylum, solving puzzles and finding out about Renee's traumatic stay. In order to solve the puzzles, you have to look at the drawings and writings on the walls, all of which are references to the actual Volterra asylum. The Ospedale Psichiatrico di Volterra, an Italian mental institution, remains a haunting relic of bygone psychiatric practices. Founded in 1888, it housed thousands of patients subjected to barbaric treatments, including enough electroshock therapy to make even Dr. Frankenstein jealous. The creators openly admit that the Town of Light, as well as the Volterra Asylum itself, are based on true events and places, and the game is intended to be an interactive story about this place and a tribute to all those who endured a real-life hell there. The asylum was infamous for its gruesome methods of treatment and the mistreatment of patients who were subjected to torture by the staff. Fortunately, this real-life nightmare was put to an end once the hospital was permanently closed. 7. Visage. Visage is quite a popular psychological horror game where you, the player, can explore an ever-changing house and discover all its secrets. As you go about the house, you get to unlock chapter after chapter that tells you the stories of those who lived there before. Visage is touted by many as one of the scariest horror games out there. However, some of the stories in it are more real than you think. Lucy, the first chapter of the story, is actually based on a girl named Annalise Michel. If that name rings a bell to some of you, that's because Annalise's story was also used as an inspiration for The Exorcist. Annalise's story began with the diagnosis of temporal lobe epilepsy at the young age of 16. That only led to a downward spiral of psychiatric treatment and medication, which further deteriorated her condition. Annalise started having hallucinations and suicidal thoughts, and even became aggravated and repulsed by crosses and Bible scriptures. This led to her family believing that she was possessed, and so they turned to the Catholic Church for help, asking for an exorcism. Despite the church's help, Annalise's condition only worsened to the point where she refused to eat or drink anything. Unfortunately, soon enough, the young girl would die from malnutrition and dehydration, which led to charges of negligent homicide against her parents and the priests. This led to a lengthy trial, but eventually the charges were dropped and the parents were free to go. What do you think? Was Annalise possessed? Or did she simply have a psychological problem? 6. Nine Childs Street. Nine Childs Street became a popular game download and playthrough for several YouTubers last year. The main character is a little boy who simply wants to see what happened to his missing neighbor in the abandoned house across the street and decides to find out for himself. Once in the house, however, he finds a lot of dolls that looked just a bit too realistic, especially when they moved. Despite how crazy this may seem, the entire background story is true, minus some of the paranormal details, of course. Nine Childs Street is based on real-life Russian philologist-turned-gravedigger Anatoly Moskvin. He was also dubbed the Dollmaker, and you'll see in a moment why. Moskvin became fascinated with the dead, specifically dead children, when he was also a child. After witnessing a funeral procession of a young girl, he became curious about dead bodies. As Moskvin continued through life, he gained an attraction to cemeteries and freshly dug graves. Eventually, he began to rob these fresh graves of their corpses and carry them back to his parents' house, focusing mostly on small young girls. He would then go on to mummify their corpses and turn them into dolls. By the time he was caught by the police in 2011, Moskvin had already turned 29 corpses into dolls. His reasoning? Well, it's entirely reasonable, really. He just simply adored children and always wanted some of his own. He probably just didn't know that he could make his own instead of stealing them from the cemetery. 5. Kolat. This eerie game is set in the cold, creepy environment of the Ural Mountains in Russia, which in the game are renamed as Kolat-Syaki. According to the game, in 1959, 9 students went suddenly missing there. Legendary actor Sean Bean narrates the tale and adds to the mystery and fear that follows the player while investigating the strange disappearance. As you retrace the hiker's steps, shadow monsters appear as you gather clues. They won't leave you to explore the mountains freely, chasing you as you look into the truth of the incident. The real-life inspiration for this game was the Dyatlov Pass incident of 1959, same year as in the game. This tragic incident involved the disappearance of 9 students from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, who, over the course of a few months, mysteriously vanished. When no messages were received from the group, an investigation was started which eventually found the belongings and strangely mutilated bodies of the students. The mystery remains even today, as no one could explain what actually happened to the skiers. And if you are enjoying this video so far, please make sure to hit that like button. Number 4. Outlast 2. Outlast 2, while not as good as the first Outlast or Whistleblower, was inspired by a real-life event, the Jonestown Massacre. The game even goes as far as to have the same name for its cult, the Temple. Outlast 2 is about charging your way through a village run by a deranged, very aggressive and very loyal cult group ran by a charismatic but scary all-the-same leader to save your kidnapped wife. Similarly, the real-life Jonestown cult was led by Reverend Jim Jones and had a following of 900 people, which was pretty much the entire city, or in this case, village. Reverend Jim Jones, the leader and founder of the People's Temple, had initially gained popularity and even gained followers such as Angela Davis. But as concerns about the group's practices grew, Jones and several hundred followers moved to Guyana, South America, to establish a new community and city known as Jonestown. The situation in the newly founded city deteriorated rapidly, and reports of abuse, mind control, and coercion started to spread. On November 18, 1978, US Congressman Leo Ryan, who was investigating the allegations, was murdered at the Jonestown airstrip while about to leave on his flight. Following this incident, Jim Jones ordered the mass suicide of his followers. It was this command that led over 900 members of the People's Temple, including children, to die by ingesting a cyanide-laced fruit punch at once. Some individuals were coerced or forced. Everyone else willingly participated in what Jones called a revolutionary suicide. 3. Chernobylite. While this game is definitely not the first piece of media to be based on the devastating disaster at Pripyat, it is definitely the latest rendition. Chernobylite is a recently released sci-fi survival game that sees players pick their way across the Chernobyl exclusion zone. While not specifically listed as a horror game, those who understand the disaster and its effects will appreciate the terrifying aspect of it. The reactor exploded in the mid-80s and caused a horrendous sequence of events, costing the lives of many and ruining the area for decades to come. Chernobylite is located in the very real exclusion zone, which covers 30 kilometers in every direction around the Chernobyl nuclear reactor site. The players must search this dangerous area for their long-lost wife. The haunting and melancholy feel provides a look into the true brutality of this awful event. 2. Resident Evil Village. Everyone knows about the Resident Evil franchise, and while you may have your favorite titles in the series, did you know that the most recent installment has actually based the characters and locations on real-life events? Let's start with the setting. Resident Evil Village features a vampiric family by the name of Dimitrescu, who inhabit Castle Dimitrescu atop a dark village. The real counterpart and inspiration for this is Beleș Castle, located in the Transylvania region of Romania. Many fans of the franchise have even gone as far as visiting Beleș Castle to draw parallels to the game. The currency in the game is also a real currency. The lei that players get to spend on weapons are actually the Romanian leu, or RON, a real currency that is currently used in Romania. For those who are wondering, what the heck does a lei mean? It translates to lions. The main character of the game, Lady Dimitrescu, was also inspired by a real person, specifically Elizabeth Bathory, a Hungarian noblewoman that was born in 1560 and was infamous for her interesting skincare routine, which involved bathing in the blood of her victims. This is actually referred to in the game in one scene by having a bath filled with blood. This, and her hobby of apparently biting people, gave her a similar description to a vampire like Lady Dimitrescu. 1. Outlast. In this title, players step into the shoes of Miles Upshaw, a journalist looking to create a report about the patients at the Mount Massive Asylum in Colorado. The hospital had been closed for many years, but was recently purchased and turned into a research facility. Miles receives information suggesting that something sinister is happening there, hinting at dangerous experiments, including those related to mind control known as MK-Ultra. The plot and mechanics of Outlast already sound terrifying, right? But that's not all. What's most horrifying is the fact that Outlast's story is based on true events. MK-Ultra was a real research project from the Cold War era in the 1950s that involved administering various drugs to unsuspecting people. A variety of substances were given to agents, military personnel, doctors, and unwitting clients of pleasure houses. Because the results were unsatisfactory for scientists, they decided to expand the project, testing new substances on prisoners and students, subjecting them not only to explosive mixtures of dangerous substances, but also to hypnosis, electroshock therapy, paralytics, and many other treatments. The truth only came to light in the 1970s after an article was published in the New York Times describing the experiments. What other terrifying horror games do you know about that were inspired by real-life events? Let us know in the comments section below. And if you enjoy gaming content and want more, make sure to check out our videos about the 10 most disturbing video games ever made, as well as the 10 scary moments in non-horror games. Both videos are linked on screen.